Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Julian Bonnici. Joining me today is Tim Diacono. We've got an action-packed show for you today. Our first story's got to do with Malta's police, who say they won't be investigating a scandalous €50,000 per day deal at St. Vincent de Paul. The second one, straight out of a movie, really, with CCTV footage capturing two would-be robbers as they try to enter a slimmer apartment. Our third story has got to do with Malta's mask laws and all the confusion around them. Our fourth, we're looking at electronic tagging for prisoners. It's a new proposal by the government. And our last story has got to do with the hunting lobby, saying that a ban on children shooting would breach their human rights. At the end of this episode, we've got a really special episode with Jonathan Mizzi from Mizzi Studios, the brains behind things like the Bus Reborn project and some really cool kiosks around London. It's going to be a really interesting interview, but first, on to our first story. Tim.
Yeah, so the police have confirmed with us that they have no intention at all of investigating a controversial direct order for the extension of the St. Vincent de Paul elderly home that was flagged by the National Audit Office on the grounds that it was given directly to two powerful companies, James Caterers and the subsidiary of the DB Group, rather than going to a tendering process. Now, the problem over here is that while the direct order allowed this to be done much faster and in a much speedy manner, and yes, it was an urgent project, the problem is that we don't know whether we as taxpayers got value for money. And apparently, according to the National Audit Office, we didn't. Like, we got ripped off quite a lot. And yeah, this could constitute abuse of public funds in that sense. However, the police has said they spoke to the NAO and don't feel the need to investigate this at all. So no one's resigning, no one's investigating it, and the contract stays, right?
Yeah, that's the worrying thing. It's as though nothing happened. There's no sort of political responsibility, no criminal responsibility, being taken. On the political side, I'm really not surprised. Actually, Lovin Malta have asked the Nationalist Party and the Labour Party to provide detailed declarations of donations received from DB and James Caterers. However, unsurprisingly, they've refused to pass on the figures. The PN said it was a confidential issue, and they assured us that they're in line with party financing laws, and the Labour Party didn't respond at all, even though both are known to be major donors of both parties. I guess we understand why the silence is there. On to our next story, quite actually a surreal story. A really weird bit of CCTV footage was published by Lovin Malta yesterday, showing two would-be robbers trying to enter a Slema apartment. So the footage happened at about 9:30 a.m. yesterday, and it shows two men searching on the floor, looking for something, until suddenly one of them realized, hey, there's a CCTV camera on the door. The one without the mask, for some reason keeping his mask beneath his chin, looks directly into the camera, showing his face to everyone. What followed was actually almost a bit comical. There are these two guys, scrambling on the stairway, not really sure which way to go. A report has been filed with the police, but really and truly, we do need your help. So if you recognize any of these two people, please, let us or the police know. Just a small little point from my end. I guess, what this sort of shows is that how important home security is, right? Sometimes, some people think it will never happen to them until it actually does, So, sometimes CCTV footage like this can be all the difference.
Yeah, you mightn't be lucky enough to have what might well be the island's two stupidest robbers coming after you. They might be a little bit more intelligent. Perhaps they won't remove their masks and facing the camera. I think it's common sense. There is more footage about this incident which will be published on Lovin Malta later on today. And speaking of masks, Malta's ridiculous mandatory mask wearing laws have become even more absurd with, now it's summer, it's fast approaching, more and more people want to go to the beach. And while we know that everyone has to wear a mask on the beach, no matter whether you're in a crowd of people or by yourself, the health authorities have said you can't take it off while going for a swim. However, there's a bit of confusion in the fact that while you can remove your mask while you're actually swimming, you can't, so they've clarified, you can't take it off if you're standing in the water. So for example, if you're just standing, paddling in the water, or just sitting down with your feet or your toes in the water, then the mask has to stay on. If you're running across the sand and in the sea, your mask has to stay on. However, if you're going from towel to sea and sea back to towel, your mask can be off. They're not saying that we should swim with a wet mask tied around our hand, at least. But obviously there's going to be a lot of confusion, as there is already. So someone actually said that her husband or her father, I forgot who, was fined for coming out of the sea with a kayak. So the laws are extremely murky, they're extremely unclear, and I think it's just time to scrap mask wearing at the beach entirely, if not in all outdoor places.
Yeah, that's it, right? When you have sort of this arbitrary nature of wearing a mask, right? Not in the sea, while running, while walking fast. I don't even know at this point. You can sort of understand how police officers struggle to enforce it, and how people fail to understand, when and when not to wear a mask. But it seems, that it could be part of the next round of measures. Deputy Prime Minister Chris Fem has announced that there'll be an easing of restrictions announced in the coming days. Now, he said it will include gyms, but I really hope, at least we're going to set, a timeline for mask wearing in the country. Just some details about COVID numbers. Yesterday, 27 new patients, 19 new recoveries and 0 deaths were recording, putting active cases at 288. However, Malta's vaccination drive continues to be going at a really rapid rate. About 110,000 people have received their second dose, and around 350,000 people have received a single dose. So really positive work. Hopefully the masks might be gone soon. Onto a different kind of prison than the COVID-19 pandemic. Home Affairs Minister Byron Camilleri yesterday announced a white paper from the government proposing electronic off-tagging of prisoners who are serving up to 1 year in prison. Just some small clarifications about the proposal. It will be for minor crimes only and won't be applicable to people who have committed domestic violence or racially motivated attacks. It will also not apply to people who are under bail, and every request will be at the court's discretion. Yesterday, Camilleri sort of envisioned 3 scenarios where it could work. There are 2 which already sort of is allowed in Maltese law in cases of parole and granted prison leave. What Camilleri said in those cases was that it would give authorities more peace of mind, to give that leave, to maybe some prisoners who they're more likely to question. The third scenario would be the electronic tagging completely sort of replacing a person's prison sentence inside Corradino. No real technical details were given to how that would work exactly. It is still a white paper. However, from my end, I think I'm kind of in favor of it, right? Because you sort of, let's say for a person who's serving electronic tagging rather than a prison sentence, right? What it might do is keep them under house arrest at night, and during the day, for example, allow them to still go to their work, their 9 to 5, which they could effectively lose once they go into prison. I guess it's trying to not make people who maybe made mistakes and do deserve a prison sentence not become criminals upon leaving the system. I don't know what you think about it.
I mean, it's a funny one. I get your point, but then again, you're either going to prison or you're not. So if something is going to carry a prison sentence, then you can go to work as well. I mean, surely the point of prison is punishing you by taking your freedoms away. Like, this seems to be kind of an admission that these crimes, for whatever reason, don't deserve jail time. Then perhaps they shouldn't deserve jail time, and perhaps they should deserve something a bit more administrative. I don't like the concept, personally, of having the authorities just watching you wherever you are and letting you and finding out if you're leaving, if you're entering your home at 10 or at 10:15. I think it's quite draconian, and you know, obviously, I imagine it's going to be accepted by a lot of people. However, this drive towards more and more surveillance constantly is quite concerning. This is the next step. On to our final story of the day. The hunters lobby of K&K has defended the right of hunters to take their children out hunting with them. Now, this debate arose after BirdLife filmed a hunter and his child at the Dura, the father teaching his son how to shoot birds. It was published, there was widespread criticism, and even the Children's Commissioner said that this should be banned entirely, that no child should be allowed to use their father's rifle when hunting. I kind of agree with the hunters on this one, because if it's a father-son pastime. It is a traditional pastime. You can't disagree with it. Fair enough. I personally wouldn't do it, but you know, some people might want to do it. Like if it's not a crime at the end of the day, and I don't know. Okay, fine, it can be dangerous, but I don't know of any cases where a child abused of his father's shotgun. There's an element of responsibility as well, and I don't think it's fair to forbid, you know, parents from taking their children out to obviously they want to pass the tradition on to future generations. What do you think?
Yeah, it's okay. So I do kind of agree with you, and I will always say, you know, I have no problem in effect with the children at least joining the hunt with their fathers or mothers. You know, it is a pastime. As you said, I do have a problem though with children handling dangerous weapons. Right? I get that it's a pastime and whatever, but if you're a race car driver, you wouldn't take you wouldn't put your 11-year-old behind the wheel of a car. You wouldn't put your 10-year-old behind the wheel of a motorcycle. The way I see it is sort of kind of what they're proposing for the cannabis reform, right? Once you're over a certain age, whatever that age might be in the case of hunting, you're allowed to make your own independent decisions. If you want to learn how to shoot, you can learn how to shoot. You can learn how to shoot with your father or learn how to shoot on the range. But that still doesn't give the right for minors to have access to this sort of weapons and whatever. Now, I know you said there hasn't been any cases of abuse, but however, it should be noted, you know, like, let's say this 10-year-old knows how to wield his father's gun. What's stopping this child from taking that father's gun when the father's not around and using it? As in, these are just some questions I think need to be asked, and I don't think it's just fair to dismiss it as a pastime either. That's it from us for now. Just a reminder to check out Lovin Digest. That's Lovin Malta's newsletter. It will give you all a rundown of what we covered that day, give you a really good overview of what's going on in Malta. We're just going to play a short clip, but before then, just a quick reminder, after the video, we've got an interview with Jonathan Mizzi from Mizzi Studio. He's going to talk about his architectural projects and the state of urban design and that in Malta. Here's the video.
welcome back to Lovin Daily. With me now is Jonathan Mizzi from Mizzi Studios. Hi Jonathan, thank you very much for accepting this interview with Lovin Malta.
Thank you.
So your studio, Mizzi Studios, was recently selected to construct kiosks, to design kiosks at Buckingham Palace in London. So can you explain, first of all, the process of how were you selected in the first place, and the design of these kiosks, how you came up with it?
So the actual sort of tender competition was 2018, so quite a while back, and there was a tender for a selection of new kiosks throughout the whole of the Royal Park. So St James's Park, Hyde Park, Green Park, along with these 9 kiosks, also a sort of small landmark building at the entrance to Hyde Park at the Serpentine. And we was chosen by a company called Colici's, who are one of the main operators for the Royal Parks. It's a huge mobilization. They have 77 million visitors annually to sort of feed within the parks. And we were chosen to sort of form the design part of that tender, which was significantly weighted in terms of the selection of the operator. And unfortunately we won. And the brief from the Royal Parks was amazing. It was, they wanted to create a sort of fleet, a family fleet of ambassadors for the Royal Parks, something, refreshment zones that really stood for their sort of sustainability ethos, as sustainability leaders, and to create, whilst kiosks are really small in nature, they've always had a very important part within the sort of streetscape or the urban environment, within natural environments. They really wanted to create something that enriched lives of visitors at the same time.
And so this is going to be open to the public, right? So if I go to London, I'll be able to see this.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's not going to be just restricted to the Queen and the royals?
No, no, not at all. It's fully for the public. The last one that went in a few weeks ago, or sort of 4 weeks ago, sits in St James, right sort of at the foot of Buckingham Palace. So, but it's open to the public, and they're throughout. So the one that we just released was the final sort of flagship, which didn't follow this steam bent organic timber design. It was still an organic form, but it was replaced with natural brass that we're going to leave to age, and it sort of reflects the sort of sense of nobility that Buckingham Palace has. And there's a lovely Queen Victoria memorial, which is also in brass. So we tried to. Every single kiosk is actually unique, even though they're like siblings of each other. My siblings look like each other, but they all have a different genetic makeup that sort of picks up the nuances of each site.
Wow. So what's the biggest challenge you faced when designing this project? It took, you said 2018, right? It started. It was quite a few years.
Yeah. The largest challenge was the engineering side and getting around this semi-permanence of nature of the kiosks. The Royal Parks are, Grade 1 listed public realm areas of outstanding natural beauty, and you can't simply go along and just start casting concrete into the natural landscape and have permanent structures. So even though they're engineered for sort of 10 years, and also hopefully they'll be there forever, but you've got to respect the land, you've got to respect the trees, and how can you sort of lift up? They have to be able to be moved within 24 hours. So literally they can come along, pick them up, and they can move. And to sort of get all that sculptural detail and make sure it's fixed, and that the integrity of the sculptural design doesn't get ruined. Some of these things were very heavily engineered. That was the challenge, but we think we managed. So.
What do you advise what would be your advice to up-and-coming urban designers in Malta who will be looking at projects like this and wondering, like, wow, I would love to be able to do this as well? And the fact that it's someone from Malta doing something.
Architecture, urban design, any form of design, industrial design, I think from a student level you really should be learning all the tools out there. So really your imagination is not, your imagination is not inhibited, it's not tapered by you not knowing these tools, because they're all out there, you know, and there's amazing computer-aided design, and really the technology of today can really inspire art. You know, art challenges the technology, and the technology inspires art. So if you can really study that, and then at the same time, if feasible, going abroad. It's great that you have Instagram and the World Wide Web, where you can see these beautiful buildings and spaces are going around the world. But it's another thing, experiencing them, experiencing what it's like to be in green open spaces, experiencing what it's like to stand in, I don't know, one of Calatrava's buildings or one of Gaudi's, you know, Sagrada Familia, and the uplifting power that architecture and art has. You know, I think, and then also really learning how to sell your design. You know, I mean, you have the power to convince your clients and persuade your clients on how things should be. We have a great responsibility as architects for the public realm, and you need to stand up and sell your vision.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what about the vision for Malta in general? So, there's been quite a lot of debate on the future of urban design in Malta. I think the consensus is that we don't have as many open spaces as we'd like. There's not, you know, the architecture even of some buildings is quite, it's not the best, it's quite poor sometimes. So what's the solution, do you think? I mean, do you think it's time to have some kind of grand plan for Malta for the next 10 years where everyone just agrees to this, or it should be a bit more, you know, more targeted?
That is a very important question that you're asking. I mean, huge. I guess we could sit here and talk for hours. And it's also a very complicated question in terms of, you know, as architecture and urban design, you know, it creates the physical bounding blocks of society, and we have a growing population, infrastructure that needs to prop up that population. As soon as you grow your infrastructure, you have that conflict with conservation and nature. Can we have a better national planning policy that then is, you know, in the UK you have a national planning policy that then filters down into local planning policy, and actually the boroughs control that. So if Slima wants to really protect its environment, its streetscapes, its height, etc., they have the power to do that. Doesn't, you know, nobody else. So policy certainly could be a lot more stringent. I think then from an aesthetics point of view, I think the biggest thing is our lack of preservation, and our soul of our cultural heritage is going. You know, it's just being eroded, and it's there. You see it. You know, there are times you drive around, and it's like being part of some dystopian film, and it's really sad. And we're going to have none left at this rate. You know, we are suffering from anxiety of our built environment, pollution, our identity is going, and you know, we have to stop now, because we're going to have none left if we don't. And then also green open spaces. Gosh, you know, the importance of that for your well-being. You know, I think that's scientifically been proved that you need 2 hours a week exposed in nature. Now that can be cumulative, that can be in one go, and if you don't have that at your doorstep, in the commons of your neighborhood, we have nature deficit disorder. It's a real thing, you know.
It absolutely is. In fact, you even say that public architecture has the power to restore mental well-being and even bring communities and people together. So, can you tell us more on this and what Malta can perhaps learn from this ethos?
You know, architecture is a form of art, or has always largely been a form of art up till the 1930s, globally. You know, art uplifts you. You know, it transcends everything, and architecture is functional art. You know, that governs space. So, you know, we have modernism that came along in the 1930s and all of a sudden rejected all of this. And there were some great examples that gave some great open plan spaces to the comforts of living. But again, it's been neuroscientifically proven that hard edges promote anxiety. You know, we need soft architecture that is one with the landscape, which is, you know, and Mother Earth, that puts in a sense of well-being. And then from a sense of identity, a sense of place, you know, that comfort, that tradition, again comes back to what we were talking about before about cultural heritage.
Yeah.
When that goes, you know, we're in this now, in this alien environment. So, and then it's an urban planning, the things we've been touching upon, and the green spaces, and all of that coming together. You know, I think what's amazing with London is where we also have a studio there, is that, you know, people say, okay, you've got bad weather, etc. The whole of London, majority, is 4 stories, 3 to 4 stories. So there's loads of light coming in, and it's that sort of thing. It's you know, we're sort of breaking down individual houses to go up to 10 stories everywhere, and it's becoming.
They have quite a few large skyscrapers as well.
They do, but it's concentrated into areas, you know, like the City of London. And there's nothing wrong with high-rise. There are great ways of densification in a certain area. It can be very sustainable, good for transport. There are other things that come with it, again, which is sense of identity and place. You know, a tower, a beautiful skyscraper that embodies that. Can you imagine New York without the Chrysler Building or without the Empire State Building? So I have no issue with certain high-rise coming along, but let's make something that is soft, that tapers into the sky, that isn't heavy. You know.
And so finally, on this issue of cultural and local heritage, a few years ago, you proposed a concept for Malta's buses, so a way to bring back the old coloured buses back on Malta streets in a new electric form. Now, the government seemed quite keen on the idea. There was a whole presentation. You know, the transport minister endorsed the project. However, like it's been a few years now. Has there been any update over there?
Yes. So the government was and is still very enthusiastic about the project. I think the public were very enthusiastic about the project. I remember you had done a survey where 90% of the island wanted it, and the intention was to be doing a feasibility study on how we could make this a reality. Obviously, COVID sort of took a 1-year delay on all of that, and I know that Transport Malta are looking into the funding. There is the European Green Deal, there's recovery funds, the Green Recovery Fund, there are the Clean Vehicle Directives that is set in law by the European Union, where by 2025 we have to, new buses need to be procured up to 25% to 50% subject to your GDP. So it's happening, it's got to happen. So legally we will eventually be having electric buses. Will we have the will we have the offspring of our old Maltese heritage icons reinvented? I hope so, and that's a question for Transport Malta.
Jonathan Mizzi, thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to be here.
That's all from us for today. Make sure you follow lovinmalta.com for all the latest updates on what's happening in the country, and subscribe to our new feature, Lovin Digest, to get a breakdown of the daily news straight into your inbox. And until we meet again, have a day full of lovin'.